Hello, guys, and welcome to the screening of Women Talking. My name is Osinachi Iba, and I am the Mind the Gap production manager. So I want to start off by thanking our sponsors, the Marin Community Foundation. They are proud long-term supporters of Mind the Gap because they understand the importance of identifying inequities in our industry and then doing something about it. And with their support, Mind the Gap has been able to do that. And we're very grateful for all the support that they give us.
Thank you, Marin Community Foundation. And as most of you, I think, probably know, we founded Mind the Gap in 2015 because we were looking at some of the numbers, and the number of women who happened to be directors who were getting hired in Hollywood was about 7%, and that was about the same as it had been 20, 30, 40 years earlier. So we started to ask ourselves, what can we do? We began by really trying to up the ante with the number of women directors and creatives who are at Mill Valley Film Festival every year. This year, we hit 53% women directors. And holding. We have a couple of other programs that we're doing. Osinachi has been working on the Creation Prize. Do you want to just tell people a little bit about that?
Yes, so the Creation Prize is a $10,000 unrestricted grant that we give to first or second time female directors with a documentary or narrative feature film in the festival. And so, we want to be supporting women filmmakers, especially early in their careers, so that we can encourage them to keep making movies. And the winner of this year's Creation Prize is Ellie Fumbi for her film Our Father the Devil. It's her first feature. It's a narrative feature, and it's going to be playing in here at 6 p.m. on Thursday, October 13th. So I encourage you to buy a ticket if you haven't already and come and see it.
Got to support these emerging filmmakers. It's so great. Actually, all three of the Creation Prize nominees are phenomenal. Unknown Country, Our Father the Devil, and Nanny. So please support, see them, help us get the word out about these films. Thank you. The other award that we have, and which is why we're here tonight, is the Mind the Gap Award, which we've been doing for several years. And this award recognizes people who are really upping the ante in the way that they engage with their work. They're people who inspire us because they are driven to do things in a way that is important and conscious. They are the people who are choosing to work with female-driven stories, who are choosing to work with women directors and women below the line. I mean, how many cinematographers do you know who are women? So since we started it, we're finding that, a lot of there is, I think, the beginning of a movement happening. This year, we're doing something that we haven't actually done before. We've recognized Viola Davis, Betty Reed Soskin, the 101-year-old, ranger from the Rosie the Riveter Park, and a lot of other amazing people, Pratibha Parma this year. But this show is the first time we're recognizing an ensemble. And what we love about that is that it's an ensemble. It's about people working together. And so we have someone here who is going to accept the award on behalf of the ensemble. The other thing that you will, I hope, know is that we've had a tradition with Mind the Gap Awards of having the recipient read something that inspires them. So we will be doing that. And to begin with, though, we're going to see a clip of some of the people who are in the film just acknowledging that they're getting this award. And then we will bring up someone very special. So, okay, we can roll the clip, please.
Thank you so much to Zoe Elton and her team at Mill Valley Film Festival for honoring us with the Mind the Gap Award. The Bay Area is one of the birthplaces of the fight for equal rights for women and all marginalized communities, and we are humbled to present it here.
Working together with this extraordinary group of women during this particular moment in time was an unforgettable experience.
Under the direction of Sarah Polley and our incredible producers, Dee Dee Gardner and Frances McDormand, we are so proud to be part of this ensemble cast and to tell this story that will ignite conversation for multiple generations of women for years to come.
We are so sorry we can't be there in person, but so happy that Fran is there to accept this special award on our behalf. We are thrilled to share our film with all of you before it comes out in December.
Please enjoy the film Women Talking.
Please welcome Frances McDormand.
Those girls clean up nice, don't they? They don't look like that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I will let everyone know. Can you hear me?
Yes and no.
You
I would
can?
say yes
Okay.
and no. Yeah.
Now, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much. We've been talking about this for a very, very long time, and now it's happening, isn't it? Not just a beautiful little citation, but an actual movement has begun. Yeah. I want to thank you guys for starting this. I'm going to start on this reading because
That
it's
would
a
be
little
great.
longer than perhaps they expect. I know you're here to see a film, and I don't want to pontificate, but I do want to read something I found very inspiring from Sarah Polley's book.
That is perfect. We will leave the stage, leave you with the stage. And
Okay. All right, great. Find your seats because I want you to hear this, girls. Here. I'm going to put this pretty little thing over here with my books. I went to the bookstore down on the block. It was very good. Unfortunately, Sarah's book, Run Towards the Danger, is out of stock. That's good. That's good. But I highly encourage you finding it because it's a great book. It's a book of essays about trauma. I want to read from it because Sarah's investigating in these essays her trauma and her analysis of its effect on her as an adult. And the one that I want to read from is called Mad Genius. This is about when she worked as an 8-year-old child actor in the film The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. That was, and the dangers that she was irresponsibly subjected to by the mad genius filmmaker, Mr. Terry Gilliam. She says, "When I was 4 years old, I treated my junior kindergarten class at North Toronto Christian School to a raucous rendition of Sit on My Face by Monty Python. It was show and tell, after all. So I sang them my favorite song, which included the lines, 'I love to hear you oralize. When I'm between your thighs, you blow me away.' I would later hear my parents gleefully recounting to friends that when the teacher and principal confronted them about where I had learned the song, they had feigned shock and horror and denied any responsibility. I knew the song because among my father's most treasured possessions were the albums of Monty Python's Flying Circus. Over and over, we would listen to it as a family. Over and over, we watched The Meaning of Life, Life of Brian, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. By the time I was 4, I could recite most Monty Python sketches and scenes by heart. In 1987, when I was 8 and already a frequently working child actor, Monty Python member Terry Gilliam came to Toronto to do a screen test with John Neville for the title role in his new fantasy comedy film, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. He was also auditioning girls all over the world for the part of Sally Salt, the Baron's trusty sidekick. The collective blood pressure in our house almost exploded over my getting the chance to meet Terry, let alone a chance to work with him. My dad worked with me for long hours on the English accent the part required, and though my parents had been wondrously hands-off with guiding my performances so far, my dad suddenly had performance notes for me when I practiced my lines for the audition. So in response, I refused to work with him anymore. If I was going to do this, I would do it my own way. When my mother got the phone call that I had gotten the part, I saw her cover her mouth in what looked like a mixture of shock, excitement, and fear. I witnessed in my father a pure, unmitigated elation, which was simultaneously exhilarating and daunting. In that instant, I knew that he had never felt as proud of anything in his life as he did of my accomplishment in getting this part. I also knew that there was nothing I could ever do in my life to make him that proud again. I had been cast in a movie directed by Terry Gilliam in which Eric Idle, another former Monty Python member, would also perform. The pinnacle of my success and of my father's pride had been reached. I was 8 years old. So while working on the film, Sarah she goes on to talk about how she was repeatedly directed towards very dangerous situations in the filming of the movie. And in one instance, she was exposed to a special effects explosion and was hospitalized and then returned to work the next day. Many years later, she writes, in 2018, when Terry was in the middle of a firestorm of controversy over comments he had made about the Me Too movement, someone tweeted an old email exchange between Terry and me, Sarah, as evidence of his character. In response, Eric Idle, who I hadn't heard from since I was a child, tweeted a response. She was right. She was in danger many times. It was amazing we never lost anyone. It was me, her, and Jack Purvis in the back of the boat. The explosion scared the horse, which backed into us, and the brilliant rider took it overboard to save us from harm. She was right. She was in danger many times. I read these 9 words over and over again. Someone who was there was confirming my memories and verifying my version of events. I swear. It was around that time that I stopped ducking for cover when I heard the sudden noise of a car door slam. Because Terry was so childlike and full of genuine wonder, it was hard for me for many years to see how responsible he was for the terror of my being on that set. And so I blamed my parents more than I should have, or perhaps I just didn't distribute my anger fairly to include him. I'm struck by how many times in my emails to him I make sure to tell him I don't hold him responsible, and I lay the blame at my parents' feet. I think at the time that I wrote those emails, I didn't hold him responsible because I didn't think he could be. The whole concept of mad genius that I had absorbed involved a necessary abdication of responsibility, empathy, and conscientiousness in favor of erratic flashes of brilliance that I assumed had to coexist with an obliviousness to other people's pain. Terry has been quoted as saying, quote, I think my priorities are right. I will sacrifice myself or anyone else for the movie. It will last. We'll all be dust. For so long, a certain glamour has come along with this single-minded pursuit of a great film at any cost. I let Terry off the hook in part because even as a child, I had bought into the glamour of the idea of the out-of-control, mad white male genius, a mythology that has dominated the film industry's understanding of what brilliance must necessarily look like. I have, throughout my life, witnessed many film crews and read many writers about film go out of their way to interpret the out-of-control, dysregulated behavior of certain men as a symptom of genius or a colorful detail to make the story of the making of a film more interesting. In my years as an actor, I've often seen young white male filmmakers putting on false eccentricity and temper as though that would make them more credible as an artist. It's so pervasive. This idea that genius can't come without trouble, that it has to, that it has paved the way for countless abuses. As an adult, I find myself wholly intolerant of the I can't even say this word, fetishization. It kind of sounds exactly what it is, isn't it? Fetishization, well, yeah, you know what I'm saying. I'm wholly intolerant of this archetype of genius, having seen firsthand great works made by decent, conscientious people, and having witnessed sharpened patience with female or filmmakers of color who show any similar signs of irresponsibility. Terry lived for so long in the film world's imagination as a mad genius whose madness and recklessness somehow elevated his work. I now view my experience with him in the context of a cultural phenomenon where white men are often allowed to get away with too much in the name of art. Though he was magical and brilliant and made images and stories that will live for a long, long time, it's hard to calculate whether they were worth the price of the hell that so many went through over the years to help him make them. On my way here today, I read an interesting quote from Annie Ernaux, who is the 2022 Nobel Prize winner in literature. She says, "Glory for a woman can only be the dazzling morning of happiness, not dawn, but the grief of. Glory for a woman can only be the dazzling morning of happiness." Miriam Toews, who wrote the novel Women Talking, and Sarah Polley, who adapted it into her screenplay, are dazzling examples. This novel and the film are dazzling examples of witnessing women's glory. I look forward to discussing this with you afterwards. That's why I make movies. It's all about the conversation.
Please welcome back producer, actor, ensemble member, Frances McDormand.
Come on, let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk about this one.
Yeah, where to start? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, go ahead, Zoe.
Yes, Fran. Okay. Back in 2017, we did our first Mind the Gap summit. It was the week that Harvey Weinstein was outed. Later on that week, Sarah Polley wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. We had several people at the festival that year who'd worked deeply with Harvey, and everybody looked a bit ashen. And the people who were doing the Mind the Gap work, the community of people who were coming together, finding community was super important. What were you doing around that time? I'm just wondering if this was the book you were reading, around that era.
Yeah, I mean, I think complicated, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So complicated. And I was really struggling with my reaction to it all. And when I read Miriam's book, it gave me a foothold. It gave me a way to navigate and investigate my feelings about it with nuance and wit, and gave me an idea that there could be a community conversation that didn't have to be so, so, you know what I'm saying? Here, what I'm saying? Cut. Yes. Not that I don't believe justice needs to be served, and it does, and it has. Then there are the other situations where it's not about justice, it's about complicity, isn't it? And so I think that Ashen was about what's my role, what's my
what did I
position
do?
in this larger
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So I feel that that's what Miriam offered, and that's what Sarah has taken, and she always understood. And when you read her book, you'll understand that she's trying to make a very specific, personal, and universal, offering a conversation about that.
Miriam is, yeah.
Miriam and Sarah.
Yeah, right. So was she always the choice for, because she writes and directs this, so when the previous films that she's done, she's also written and directed. Was she always your first choice?
Yeah,
What did that look like?
I can't even remember if, actually, the first person that I brought the book to was Dee Dee Gardner, because I have to say, the moment I knew that Dee Dee worked with Plan B, and I knew some of their films, but the time that I really attached her name to a film was Moonlight, and it wasn't just the film, which really I felt was a paradigm shift in filmmaking, but it was also when the Academy Awards debacle happened, where they were not invited to the stage to celebrate their achievement. Now, we all have, not we, I have very specific ideas about what that competition means. What happened in that moment for me was when it all breaks down. When that thing broke down was the night. And then the next year, when they were not invited back to celebrate that film, but the two people that made the mistake were invited to come back and redeem themselves, like, okay, this is really messed up. So there was something about it for me that was like, who's Dee Dee Gardner? She's making these movies. She's responsible for something that's happening in filmmaking. I want to meet her, and I want to work with her. So I sent her the book. Our first meeting, she had diagrams. She had outlines. She is a smart woman, and she knows how to develop films. And so one of the people she'd always wanted to work with was Sarah. So she brought her name. I mean, we also really believed that it needed to be somebody that was going to take from soup to nuts. You know, it wasn't going to be somebody who we kind of farmed out a script to other people and that they were going to develop. It was going to be somebody who had, and Sarah had already read the book. Miriam Toews is from Ontario.
Right.
They know each other's work. Sarah had read the book in her book club. She'd already attached the idea of, oh, this could be my answer to these larger questions culturally. So it was like the perfect storm, really.
Interesting. And so talk a little bit about working with Sarah and the choices that you made in developing the actual script.
Yeah, it was.
And specifically the voiceover stuff as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. There's so many things I want to say about working with Sarah. I want to start with that from the moment I started producing work to act in, and then now just want to produce. Forget about the acting stuff. Ooh, I like this other stuff. But no. So that was Olive Kittredge. That was 10, 11 years ago. I've only worked with female filmmakers, not because I wasn't interested in working with male filmmakers, but because that's the way it happened. And it seemed that female filmmakers were the best people to tell the stories of what the material that I was bringing to them. So what I've learned so much about Sarah. Sarah has taught me so much about leadership and the difference between patriarchal leadership and matriarchal leadership. One of the things, and one of the best examples of this, I have two that I'd like to give you, if
Please.
I may.
Oh, yeah.
We were just talking about this. So the narration of the film now is in Auche's voice, the youngest woman of the hayloft. In the book, it is August is the narrator because he is asked by the women as a literate person to come into the hayloft to take the notes. So it was a literary conceit that Miriam used that was great, and Sarah translated that into her adaptation. So we went into the filming of the film with August narrating the film, Ben Whishaw, the exemplary Ben Whishaw, recording that narration, and then as it got into editing, it just didn't seem right. Now, then we started tracking it back to early development, and both Dee Dee and I saying, it's kind of weird, right? It's women talking, and the first voice you hear is a man. I don't know. But it was moving forward in a lot of different ways. So then when they get to editing, many things happen. And I wish Sarah could tell you this story, but I've seen her tell other people. I've seen her tell audiences, and this is what I'm talking about: leadership and a matriarchal leadership. She says, so there was this point where Fran and Dee Dee were making noise about it being August, and okay, that was part. And then Kate's performance in the editing, we started being really drawn to her perspective of what was happening in the hayloft as the youngest member of this group of women. Then in the editing, so then Chris, the editor, male, said, Sarah, you keep leaning towards Auche's point of view. And then Dee Dee said, what about, what if Auche was talking to Una's unborn child or child born? And so when Sarah tells the story, she tracks it all back. Every single moment of the decision-making process, she gives credit to the voices that were in that process, and then she made the decision. It's not like she let up a whole bunch of other people. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? No. We're going to make it Auche. That's matriarchal. That's a leadership. The other moment that I think was really profound for me was, help me? What was the other one I wanted to tell you?
Oh, it was
Matriarchal.
About Kate and what Kate said.
Say again.
What Kate said. So was that the moment? No, another moment. Telluride? I'm forgetting.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a whole other.
That's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole other point. But since we're talking about Kate, the culmination of this process, I think, is best exemplified by something that Kate, the actress that played Auche, the youngest member of the community, when we first showed the film in Telluride at the Telluride Film Festival, one of the questions from the audiences after the film was to the group, how did this experience affect your life? If it did, how? And Sarah said something, Claire said something, and then Auche, Kate, she raised her hand, and we're like, you don't have to raise your hand, Kate, just. And she said, okay, well, when we started this process, I felt that I should just do as I was told, and then I realized there was more expected from me, and now I expect more. Yes! Boom.
Fabulous. I mean, were there other moments like that where, as a producer, that you thought, this is really working. This is radical. This is really working in ways that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many. We were supposed to go into filming before the pandemic,
Right.
And so the pandemic, that 2 years of the pandemic, really slowed things down in a way that, that were exponentially important to the gestation of the project. It's not that it wouldn't have been something extraordinary, because it was already fully written and realized and for Sarah, but there was a process of casting, there was a process of finding a crew, there was a process of kind of the artistic development, the aesthetic development of the project, I think, that really was served by the time that we had. But I would say one of the things is the way that Sarah was able to, she had a lot of time with actors on Zoom. She had a lot of time with us. We rehearsed together as a company. We had a reading as a company.
All of you on Zoom?
On Zoom.
Yeah, okay.
All on Zoom. And there was this sense that we weren't meeting in a room, and then when we all got together in Toronto, we were still under serious lockdown, all the British actors had to quarantine for 3 weeks. I drove up there and quarantined for 2 weeks. So there were all these barriers to get to each other. When we finally got to each other in that hayloft.
In Toronto?
In Toronto, still masked, and the hayloft was on a soundstage. We were all so desperate for community. And we were just vibrating. We were vibrating with the excitement of being in the same room. And then when we weren't allowed to take the mask off until the cameras rolled. And then it was like, hi! Because we were like trying to get across the mask. We're trying to get across the mask all during rehearsal. And then it's like, here I am. And then you saw each other. It was like, oh my, it was glorious. It was glorious. Yeah. And so I think that, I don't want to talk about why I think it was brilliant for Sarah to cast me as Scarface Jans, if I can, for a moment.
Please do.
First of all, who doesn't want to play Scarface Jans? I've always wanted to have a scar. But so you don't need, Frances McDormand to play Scarface Jans necessarily, but what it does is that you think, wait a minute, maybe she's coming back. Or you think about those women who aren't going. You think about that large group of women who voted not to leave and she has Scarface and her family hardly speak. We don't have dialogue. It's all kind of this unspoken kind of passion play that's happening outside the hayloft. And I think it's really, really important that group of women in the community are represented.
So that's how you came to be. So when you went into it as a producer, did you imagine that you would be one of the characters? Was that
Not necessarily. It had a weird evolution because this is also something interesting about, well, not that interesting about the industry. In fact, a kind of a problem with the industry. I started producing because I wanted work that was satisfying as an actor after the age of 55. And so one of the ways I did that was by developing roles to play. And I also, my son had left home. Well, did they ever leave home? I don't think so. He moved on to the next phase of his life and didn't need me as much as he used to need me. But so I knew I needed to, I also had the opportunity to spend more time working. And I wanted to play main protagonists. I didn't want to play supporting roles anymore, so I developed those roles. But by the time I got to this, I wasn't interested in being in the hayloft necessarily. I just wanted to know that the hayloft was going to exist, and that conversation was going to exist. So, but then naturally, often, I think it's the same for male actors as well as female actors. When you get the credit of producer, executive producer, because, yeah, right, yeah, they raised the money and then they went on vacation and they came back and they got a card on the movie. That's not the way I did it. And that's not how I wanted to do it. I really wanted to be involved in the process. So there was kind of this natural thing that happened, not natural, but kind of evolutionary thing that happened where I was considered for either Agatha, or Greta in the film, and it was in the early development was like, no, that's not. Is it necessary? Do we have to do that? Because if we can get the money anyway, then right. I don't want to. I want to be Scarface Jans.
And we were talking earlier about ensemble. This is an ensemble, and how rare that is. How did that manifest in the shooting process? I mean, it sounds almost like between, the trip-ups of COVID and, this evolutionary process that we've all gone through in how we do make life, how we make work, how we do any of this stuff. That an ensemble may have been a very sort of organic. I mean, it's obvious from the material, but talk a little bit about ensembles and how important that is. And do you get tripped up with actor egos?
Not in this case at all.
Yeah, I can see
Not at
that,
all.
yeah.
I mean, it's almost the exact opposite. In the process of costuming and working with the makeup and hair departments to build the characters, because as you see, it's only everybody gets one look. It's not like there's a lot of costume changes. It's not all of a sudden the poor urchin girl gets to dress up in an evening gown all of a sudden. It's like you get one dress, it's made out of polyester so you can wash it and dry it fast. No. And the costume designer, Kinta, it was one of the stealth bombers of the whole operation. She grew up near Mennonite communities in Ontario. She is a woman of color. She is a very, very dynamic investigator of the world of clothes, not fashion, not costumes, but clothes. So she went to the Mennonite communities. She engaged Mennonite women who sewed the costumes. She went to secondhand stores where she bought a lot of those dresses that were on the background. She had all the women of the Mennonite community sewing the men's and boys' overalls. There was like this. So in the development of the characters' costume and makeup and hair, at one point the makeup artist Shauna came to us and said, I don't know if I should. I have to. Okay. So Claire came in today. Claire, who plays Salome. Claire came in today, and I don't know what to do with her eyebrows. They're too perfect. And so I said to her, Claire, are you plucking your eyebrows? And Claire was like, what? No! Do you think I would do that? Sarah asked me months ago not to shave my legs, my armpits, or pluck my eyebrows. Do you think I would do that in secret? No, this is the way they grow out of my face. She was so, she was livid. She was so, no, she wasn't humiliated. She couldn't believe we would think that of her. That was the bar. That was the level of commitment, right? What do you need me to do?
Wow.
I mean, that doesn't seem like a lot, plucking your eyebrows. But, for young women in her position, it's a different thing. They were really committed not only to the authenticity as it is in a fictional film. They were really, really committed to the ensemble, to the point of, there was no sense of hierarchy, in that no one had any more, luxury or, comfort than anybody else. They made sure they all stayed in the same place. They stayed on the set together. Mm-hmm. They, when Rooney had to go feed her child, everybody understood, take a break, that's what has to be done. So there was a real sense of community that way. Mm. And I'm not just bullshitting. It really was true.
Yeah. I bet there are some questions out here in the audience. One in the middle there, yeah.
No, he was the only person that Sarah wanted to cast. It was
Did you all hear the question?
Ben Whishaw is August. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's almost as if Miriam understood that it was going to be Ben, right?
There's a question in the back, yeah.
I wonder if the Mennonite community has seen the film and had any effect on them?
Has the Mennonite community seen the film, and has it had any effect on them?
Are there any Mennonites here? No, I asked seriously because they're really early, after getting in touch with Miriam Toews, the author, who comes from a Mennonite background, Dee Dee and I went with her. She was on a book tour with the book, and we went to Strand Books in New York to sit in on a talk she was giving about the book, and then to talk about adaptation of novels to film, both which Dee Dee and I have both done. And it was interesting because there were two Mennonite couples in the audience, and they were asking her about her decision to use this incident that happened in real life, and make it into a fictional book. And she handled it with great aplomb. They were not aggressive. They were not, there was no real judgment, but they were really curious why she had used this particular moment, this not particularly comfortable or not a great moment in the Mennonite history to expose to a larger audience. And she basically said, it happened. I took it as a diving board for what I say in the movie, in the book, and what we say in the film. It is an act of female imagination. What if? Not the assaults, but what if a group of women can get together and have agency and take action for their future, which did not happen. So I think...
you mean which didn't happen?
It did not happen in Bolivia, in the Mennonite community where the incident took place. The incidents took place. So I think so far, we haven't been, questioned by any Mennonite audience members, but I'm sure it will happen. And I think that Sarah and all of us, Sarah is prepared. On the other hand, it's not her responsibility to answer it either. As a filmmaker, it's her responsibility has been done. She's excited conversation. Oh, now I see my Bolinas friends. I thought you were going to be over there. Oh, you're mixed in over here. I was worried you hadn't made it. Hi, everybody.
Okay. Yeah, wave if you're from Bolinas. Yay.
Yeah, so I want to take this opportunity actually to say that I have spent the last 17 years of my life in West Marin, and if I track back the last 10 years of my life as a producer and actor, a lot of it is because of the inspiration I found in that landscape and with the people I've met there. Thank you. It's true. Yeah, they're gonna make me dinner, but that's not why I said that.
Other questions?
Yes.
So, Fran, you talk about that ensemble acting. Did the script change in the hayloft? Were there things that came up that people wanted to change?
Yes, that's the story. Remember, that's what I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. See, Melinda, you know.
And did everyone hear that? Okay.
So there were like improvisational moments. Not a lot.
Did things change in the hayloft, right?
I also think it could be very triggering. There's so much that happens.
Exactly.
And it could be triggering?
Here's another. So two stories. One fact, one story. Sarah really understands that. The book that I read from at the beginning of the evening, she talks a lot about her personal trauma. And so she engaged a psychiatrist who deals with trauma. And we met with her on Zoom, the entire cast, and she was available through the entire process for anyone that needed to reach out. Not unlike an intimacy coach, which I have feel a little ambivalent about. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I know you had a...
We did it, yeah. We did an
I wish I'd been to that, because I'm not
yeah.
really sure where that fits, but this was a great leadership. As a leader, Sarah really understood something important. So the moment in the film where Marieke, who is the woman who is being physically abused by her husband, Klaus, says she's going back. The women understand. She said to the hayloft, the women in the hayloft, she said, it's not only the men and boys who are good students. And her mother says, I'm sorry. So they're filming that. And Sarah realizes that one of the crew members, a male, is very moved during the rehearsal of the scene. He's moved, and she says, "Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. Don't worry about it." "What's going on?" My family. It's just, I don't know. It's bringing up stuff. And she goes, "Well, is this good enough for you?" And he said, "No, not really." And she said, "Well, what do you think would work?" And he said, "I need to really believe she's sorry." And so Sarah went to Sheila, playing Greta, and said, "Sheila, I don't want to impose anything, but you've got one I'm sorry. See what it feels like if you say it more than once." And so Sheila says her 3, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And Sarah turned to the guy and went, "Does that do it?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's good." Right? Smart. Not a lot of people take the time to do that. But I also believe that as part of yes, I'm being sexist, but it's part of the matriarchal empathic nature to feel that person behind her crying. She's not going to go, "Will you just please stop it? Just get a Kleenex, for God's sake." She went, "Why are you crying? Is there anything I can do about this?"
Is there a question on this side? Yes.
So first of all, Frances, thank you for making this film.
You're welcome.
You've inspired me so many times with your courage and your truth that you speak. So it seems really amazing that at this moment in a woman's life that we are living right now, we are in such danger. And every woman in the world, and I'm really inspired by this. I'm also very inspired by this film to have the courage to stand up right now. And I'm just wondering how you feel that this is the year this film came out, when you actually have no body autonomy anymore. And this film came out of women talking and having agency.
No, I mean, it's fucking shocking. No, I feel paralyzed. I said, what? I mean, I'm 65, and that's not the way it was supposed to go. So, movies are not the answer. Movies are propaganda, right? So what we're that's kind of why it's important that this reaches a large audience, because it's not an answer to anything, but it is a conversation starter. And we are actively, and I think this is also because it's Sarah and Dee Dee and I, we're actively pursuing all the industry things that everybody loves, the whole convention, and let's see how many, people can come see the movie in theaters, but we are also screening actively for colleges and universities. And we're meeting with people afterwards. And we're engaging gender studies professors in theology and ethics and gender politics, anybody that can actually moderate a conversation in an intelligent way and an active way towards leading a group of young people towards a conversation. And they're desperate for it. It's like my partner Dee Dee says, it's becoming anthemic. And that's the hope. Use it to talk about the future, not about the horrible present, but the future, and try to radicalize the conversation more. Well, maybe 2. I mean, we'll negotiate this. Okay.
Okay.
So it was in, the idea of this is a story about Mennonites, and, there could be some offense taken or whatever, and so some sensitivity or not. But, how do we keep this movie from being just a story about Mennonites? In other words, because it's clearly so much more. And is that likely to be received and obvious, or is it likely to get, kind of...
I don't know. We're going to find out, right? But it's interesting because when we were developing it, because Sarah is the person that she is, she said at one point to Dee Dee and I think that we should seriously consider casting it diversely, having a color conscious cast. And Dee Dee and I were like, no, Sarah. And she was like, no, listen to me, because it takes it out of allegory into a larger global conversation. And we said, yes, but it's about an isolated, hermetic, white community for a reason, because that's what happens in isolated communities. This kind of feeding off itself, right? It's a beast that's feeding off itself. And the minute we truly do become diverse, then perhaps the beast won't be eating off itself. So I think that part of what, this Mennonite community that's speaking to this community in Mill Valley in a very specific way. But I think that because it's just distant enough, you can go, well, it's not me. It's not me. It's not us. We don't do that. And then somewhere along the way, your gut starts churning, and you know that you have been in a situation that feels weirdly similar, regardless of your atheism, your faith, your social standing, your socioeconomic background, right? So I think that, it remains to be seen. But I'm sure that Sarah had that. She's smart enough to know that's what she had in mind, right? That's why she also wanted to make it epic. Like when I first read the novel and I imagined it as a movie, I thought of it much grittier and darker and not smaller, but much more, not with the grandeur of the filmmaking, not with the big, crane shot where they are all moving out into the distance. But she always understood, and she always really advocated for the idea that it had to be as epic as, a John Ford movie.
God, so many last questions. Okay, someone jump in. Go for it.
Okay, I have a question. I wrote it down and then I was like, no, I'm not going to ask that.
Oh, go for it.
So I'm here with my family, and we're all just women. We're going to be talking about this for a while now, I think. But how do we get, right now it's in front of the right people, but how do we get films like this in front of, not necessarily the wrong people, but people
The other people.
don't go out of their way to see films like this that are kind of uncomfortable and pushing the boundaries of, where we could go to also do the
Yeah, this is a challenge now, right? I think that you're part of the answer. I think I start from a place of something that my son said, Pedro McDormand Cohen, and he said to his father, who's a filmmaker, when he was around 9, he said, oh, I get it. You make films and I like movies. So now Pedro McDormand Cohen, who's a brown man and navigating the world now as a 28-year-old, he saw the film the last couple of days, and he said, "Oh man, that felt great. It's been so long since I've seen a film. I got to see more of those. It's really good." Like, great. Tell all your friends. So that's kind of, I don't know what word of mouth means. No, I do. I know what word of mouth means. It means TikTok. It means Instagram. So we're trying to find that sweet spot between 14 and 20. That's what we're trying to find. Like Dee Dee says, let it be an anthem. Let it be a carrying call. Let it be something that so the challenge is, instead of saying, this is going to be good for you, take it once a day, it's going to be really good for you, it's about them finding it and going, hey, everybody, they don't know, but we're going to take this and fuck everybody up. So I don't know how to do that. I don't think it's going to be on the streets of Mill Valley, but I might be wrong. Let's see. Let's see what you all can do.
Tell all your friends.